They said Damian Blackwood had no heart, that the billionaire who ruled the city's skyline and the darkness beneath it had traded every feeling for power. But destiny has a cruel sense of humor. Because tonight, in the rain-drenched silence of the alleyways, a girl with nothing to lose would make the coldest man alive feel again. Welcome back, dear hearts of the moon, to Lily's Heart Tales, where every heartbeat tells a story. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, join our growing family, and don't forget to drop your hype points if this tale stirs your heart tonight. Now, let's begin. The rain had been falling since dusk, turning the city into a blur of reflections. Headlights stretched across puddles like ribbons of molten gold. Ava Monroe clutched her worn-out coat tighter as she hurried down the narrow street behind the cafe where she worked the late shift. Her shoes squelched in the water, her breath rising like ghostly smoke. Rent was due tomorrow, her boss had docked her pay, and the last bus had long gone. The night smelled of rust and rain, and something else, something watching. She turned a corner and froze. 3 men stepped from the shadows, faces hidden beneath hoods, voices low and slick as oil. The tallest one smiled with teeth that gleamed too white under the street lamp. "Pretty thing like you shouldn't walk alone," he sneered. Her heart thudded. She backed away, hands shaking, but the alley was a dead end. The wind shifted, the smell of ozone cut through the stench of fear. A black car slid into the mouth of the alley, tires whispering against wet asphalt. Its headlights carved twin paths of light through the rain. The men hesitated. The engine idled, a deep, predatory purr. Then the driver's door opened. He stepped out like a shadow given form. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal coat that clung to him as the rain poured harder. His hair, dark as night itself, glistened with droplets. His eyes caught the streetlight, silver, cold, unreal. "Leave," he said, voice calm but edged with command. The men laughed until the first one tried to move and found his throat pinned by an unseen force, just air, pressure, and power. Ava stumbled back, breath caught somewhere between awe and terror. The stranger didn't hit them. He moved too fast for that, each motion precise, economical, terrifyingly controlled. One man crashed into a wall, another dropped with a strangled cry. In seconds, the alley fell silent, except for the rain and the low growl still curling from his chest. He turned toward her. Lightning flashed. For an instant, she saw something impossible. The faint outline of fangs, a glimmer of gold beneath his skin, like molten metal pulsing with each heartbeat. Then it was gone, replaced by the impassive face of a man who looked carved from winter itself. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. I didn't ask to be," she whispered, trembling. The men groaned behind him, and he glanced their way, a single look that made them crawl to their feet and flee into the storm. She stared at him, trying to speak, but his gaze trapped her words. Those eyes, cold, luminous, ancient, studied her as if searching for something long lost. When a siren wailed in the distance, he turned away. "Go home, Miss Monroe." She froze. How do you know my name?" He didn't answer. He simply opened his car door and disappeared into the city's night like he'd never been there. The taillights faded into the fog, leaving only the echo of that strange velvet voice in her mind. Ava stood alone beneath the rain, her pulse still trembling in her wrists. She should have been terrified. Instead, warmth spread through her chest, an unfamiliar, dangerous warmth. Somewhere inside, a whisper stirred like a heartbeat, answering another. And though she didn't know it yet, the man who saved her tonight had just marked her fate forever. The next morning came wrapped in gray skies and a strange quiet. Ava Monroe woke with the lingering scent of rain still clinging to her hair, her dreams haunted by flashes of silver eyes and the echo of that deep voice. Every time she blinked, she saw the alley, the men, the car, the stranger who had moved like a storm wrapped in skin. She pressed her fingers to her temples and tried to shake it off, but it clung to her like perfume on silk. Who was he? And how had he known her name? At the cafe, everything felt unnaturally loud. The clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the idle gossip of co-workers. Ava moved through it all like someone sleepwalking. Her best friend, Mia, noticed instantly. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said, leaning on the counter. Ava gave a small, shaky laugh. "Maybe I have." She didn't explain. How could she? Who would believe her if she said a man had appeared out of nowhere, fought like a demon, and vanished before the sirens came? When the cafe door opened and the tiny bell chimed, Ava looked up and froze. The entire room seemed to go silent. There he was, Damian Blackwood, the billionaire whose name ruled the business pages, whose face graced every news feed. He looked impossibly composed in a dark suit that probably cost more than her entire apartment lease. But his eyes, those eyes, were exactly as she remembered, sharp, metallic, and unreadable. He didn't look at her directly. He didn't need to. The air shifted the moment he walked in. Mia's jaw dropped. "That's Damian Blackwood. What's he doing here?" she whispered. Ava couldn't answer. Her heart was beating so hard it hurt. She turned away, fumbling with the coffee grinder, hoping he wouldn't notice her trembling hands. But when she placed his order, a simple black coffee, on the counter, his fingers brushed hers. Just for a moment, just enough for her breath to catch. "Miss Monroe," he said softly, his voice a quiet storm. "We meet again." Her head snapped up. You really do know my name." A faint smile tugged at his lips, though his eyes remained distant, calculating. "I make it a habit to remember those I save." His tone was casual, but there was something underneath it, something that made her spine tingle. Mia stood frozen beside her, staring as if she couldn't decide whether to swoon or scream. Damian took his coffee, gave a slight nod, and walked out without another word. Yet the moment he stepped into the rain, Ava felt it, the same pull as last night, like the world tilted slightly toward him. She tried to dismiss it as gratitude, fascination, curiosity. But deep down, she knew better. This wasn't normal. It wasn't even human. That night, she couldn't sleep. The city outside glowed with a soft amber haze, but her small apartment felt colder than ever. Every creak of the floorboards made her pulse race. She told herself she wasn't expecting anything, that she wasn't hoping for anyone. But when the power flickered and her window rattled from a sudden gust, she knew. She felt him before she saw him. He was standing outside, half shrouded in fog, looking up at her window as though the distance between them meant nothing. His silver eyes caught the faint glow of the streetlight, reflecting like moonlight on water. She should have called the police, screamed, something, but her feet moved on their own. She opened the window. The wind rushed in, bringing the scent of rain and pine and something older, wilder. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. His gaze didn't waver. "And yet," he said, voice low, "here I am." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed far below them, unaware that its richest, coldest man was standing under the window of the girl he'd saved. "Why are you following me?" she finally asked. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because I shouldn't care," he murmured, "but I do." Before she could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the mist like a memory she couldn't hold on to. Ava leaned against the window frame, her heart trembling. Somewhere in the dark, a wolf howled, a long, lonely sound that made her shiver. She didn't know that she'd just been marked again, not by fate this time, but by a bond ancient and dangerous. And this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The days that followed passed like a half-remembered dream. Ava tried to return to normal, to lose herself in routine, the hum of coffee machines, the chatter of customers, the comforting rhythm of daily exhaustion. Yet, no matter how she tried, his shadow followed her everywhere. Damian Blackwood. His name alone felt like a spell. She caught glimpses of him in newspapers, business headlines, and glossy magazines that adorned the cafe counter. Blackwood Investments acquires another tech firm, the billionaire behind the curtain. He looked untouchable, like someone born from the cold itself, a man sculpted from everything she wasn't. But the more she tried to distance herself from him, the closer he seemed to get. Twice she caught sight of a black car idling across the street from her apartment. Once, she swore she saw him standing beneath a lamppost as she hurried home, the faintest glimmer of silver in his gaze before the light flickered out. Fear should have been her first instinct, but strangely, it wasn't. Instead, it was something warmer, heavier, inexplicable. A pull. At work one morning, a letter came addressed to her in elegant handwriting that wasn't her own. No stamp, no sender, just her name, Ava Monroe, written in dark ink that bled slightly at the edges. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, a single invitation card, black, embossed with silver lettering. You are cordially invited to the Blackwood Foundation Gala. Beneath it, a signature, sharp, deliberate. DB. Her breath caught. She didn't even remember agreeing to attend, but something in her gut told her she wouldn't be able to refuse. That night, her reflection stared back at her from the cracked mirror in her room as she dressed in the only gown she owned, pale blue, soft and simple. She told herself she was going to thank him for saving her, nothing more. But as she arrived at the sprawling Blackwood estate, she realized gratitude wasn't the reason her heart raced. The mansion loomed before her like a cathedral of glass and stone, its windows gleaming with cold light. The moment she stepped inside, the air changed, perfumed with expensive cologne and secrets. Everyone in the room seemed to know his name, yet no one dared approach him. Damian stood at the far end of the ballroom, surrounded by power but utterly alone. He wore black again, always black, and when he turned, his gaze found her instantly. It was like being caught in moonlight, every sound fading except the thunder in her chest. The music slowed, the crowd blurred, and before she knew it, he was standing before her, offering his hand. You came, he said softly. I wasn't sure I should, she replied. And yet, he murmured, echoing the same words he'd spoken outside her window. Here you are. His fingers brushed hers, cold at first, then strangely warm. He led her to the dance floor, and for a moment, the world vanished. Every movement was measured, graceful, magnetic. She could feel his strength beneath the calm exterior, the subtle tension in his hand as though holding her was both salvation and danger. You shouldn't have been in that alley, he said, his voice a low whisper close to her ear. Those men weren't ordinary. Ava frowned. What do you mean? He hesitated, then looked away, his jaw tightening. There are things you don't understand about this city, about me. His tone darkened, edged with something feral. You're safer if you stay away. But Ava wasn't the kind of girl who turned away from mystery, especially not from someone who had haunted her every thought since that night. Then tell me, she said, stopping mid-dance, what are you hiding? His expression shifted. Pain, conflict, something ancient flickering behind his eyes. Then, with a sigh that sounded more like surrender, he guided her toward a balcony overlooking the moonlit gardens. The night air wrapped around them, cool and electric. I've spent years keeping who I am locked away, he said finally. But when I saw you that night, something changed. Something I thought was gone woke up again. Ava's heart raced. Who are you, Damian? She asked quietly. He looked up at the moon, his eyes glowing faintly silver. A man born of two worlds, he said, one that thrives in the light and one that hunts in the dark. He turned to her, the faintest edge of his teeth catching the light, too sharp, too white. I'm not human, Ava, not entirely. Her breath caught. Every instinct screamed that she should run, but her feet didn't move. There was fear, yes, but beneath it, something else. Wonder, curiosity, a connection she couldn't explain. "Then what are you?" she whispered. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice a low hum against her skin. "A wolf bound by blood to a curse that never sleeps," he said. "The Blackwood line carries it, generation after generation. We're predators in a world that pretends to be civilized." Ava trembled, yet she couldn't look away. The air between them thickened, charged with something that felt almost like gravity. "Why tell me this?" she asked. "Because," he said, his hand brushing her cheek, "you deserve to know what you've stepped into. The night I saved you wasn't coincidence. It was instinct. I felt you before I saw you. Your heartbeat called to mine." The truth hung between them like smoke and fire. Ava's lips parted, her pulse echoing in her ears. "So what happens now?" she asked softly. Damian's eyes softened, though sorrow lingered behind them. "Now," he said, "I try not to lose myself to what I am. And you try to forget me." But as she looked up at him, bathed in moonlight and mystery, Ava knew forgetting was impossible. Because in his eyes, she saw something that mirrored her own loneliness. And deep within the stillness of that night, a bond neither of them understood had already begun to form. Dangerous, irreversible, and destined to change everything. And from the shadows of the garden below, unseen eyes watched them both. The beginning of something much darker than either of them could imagine. The wind shifted around them, cold and alive, curling Damian's scent through the air, wood smoke, rain, and danger. Ava stepped back slightly, her breath uneven. The moon had climbed higher, casting silver fire across his face. "Forget you?" she said quietly, disbelief in her voice. "You save my life, you appear in my dreams, and now you tell me you're not human. How am I supposed to forget that?" Damian's jaw clenched, and for a moment the facade cracked. Beneath the control, the billionaire veneer, there was something wild, something ancient struggling to stay buried. He turned away, gripping the marble balcony rail until his knuckles went white. "You don't understand," he said. "Every time you're near, it gets harder to control it. The wolf, he knows you. He remembers you." Her brows furrowed. "Remembers me? We've never met before last week." His voice dropped lower, rougher, like gravel in velvet. "Not in this lifetime." Ava's pulse faltered. She laughed weakly, hoping it would shatter the tension, but the sound only deepened the gravity between them. "You sound insane," she whispered, yet her heart didn't believe her own words. "Maybe I am," he replied, turning back to her. His eyes gleamed faintly silver again, that same predatory glow she had seen in the alley. "Or maybe you've been part of this story much longer than you think." Inside, the ballroom had dimmed to soft golds and muted laughter. From behind the glass doors, a man in a gray suit watched them, his expression unreadable. When Damian noticed, the shift in his posture was instant. His shoulders straightened, his gaze hardened. He stepped closer to Ava, lowering his voice. "We're being watched." "By who?" she whispered. But before he could answer, the man in gray approached. His smile was sharp, practiced, and cold. "Mr. Blackwood," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "I didn't expect to see you entertaining anyone tonight, especially a waitress." The disdain in his voice was unmistakable. Ava stiffened, but Damian's eyes flashed, dangerously. "Watch your tone, Victor," Damian said, each word like steel. "She's my guest." The man chuckled darkly. "Your guest or your weakness?" The air grew tense. Ava could feel it, heavy and electric. There was something more between these two men, something bitter and old. "Still haunted by the curse, aren't you?" Victor continued, stepping closer. "Careful, Damian. You remember what happens when a Blackwood falls for a human." Ava blinked, confused, but Damian's expression was carved from ice. "Leave," he said softly. But his voice carried power, a command that made the chandeliers tremble. Victor's smirk faltered. His pupils dilated just for a second, revealing a glint of gold beneath the human mask. Ava's breath hitched. "He's one too," she realized aloud. Damian stepped between them. "He's worse," he said under his breath. "He's a wolf who's chosen the darkness." Victor laughed quietly, bowing slightly as he backed away. "And you, brother," he said, his voice a taunt, "are a wolf pretending to be human." Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd like smoke. Ava's thoughts spun. "Brother," she whispered. "You mean he's your—" "Half-brother," Damian said curtly. "And my greatest mistake." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration simmering beneath the surface. "Victor feeds on chaos. He thrives on the curse. He's been waiting for me to lose control, to fall." "And I'm making that happen?" she asked softly. He looked at her, the storm in his eyes breaking for a heartbeat. "You make everything harder to control," he admitted. They stood in silence, the tension between them thick enough to breathe in. The rain began again, faint but steady, drumming against the balcony rail. Damian's expression softened. "You should go home. It's safer." Ava shook her head. "Stop saying that. You saved me once, Damian, and I'm not afraid of you. Whatever this is, I want to understand it." He stepped forward slowly, as if torn between reason and desire. "If I show you what I am," he murmured, "you can never unsee it. You'll never live in the same world again." Her heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. "Show me." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then the air around him shifted, the same electric pulse she'd felt that night in the alley. His eyes flared silver, veins of light crawling faintly beneath his skin. His voice deepened, layered with something primal. The air vibrated, and then, before her eyes, the outline of his body shimmered, his form blurring at the edges until she saw it. The shadow of a wolf, larger than any she'd ever imagined, standing just behind him like a ghost of moonlight. Its eyes mirrored his, beautiful, deadly, infinite. Ava gasped, her knees weakening, but she didn't run. She reached out, trembling, her hand hovering just inches from the spectral creature's face. She breathed. "You're beautiful." The glow faded instantly. Damian turned away, his breath ragged. "No," he said, voice breaking. "I'm cursed." A silence fell so heavy it felt like the night held its breath. "What happens to you during the full moon?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, then looked back at her, sorrow in every line of his face. "I lose myself," he said. "The wolf takes over, and anyone near me, anyone I care for, doesn't survive." Ava's heart clenched. "Then why tell me?" He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Because lying to you hurts worse than the curse itself." Lightning streaked across the sky, and for one suspended moment, they stood facing each other. Two souls bound by fate and fear, the billionaire and the girl who had unknowingly awakened the beast within him. And as the thunder rolled across the horizon, Ava realized something terrifying. She wasn't just part of Damian's secret. She was his secret. And somewhere inside the mansion, Victor's voice echoed faintly through the halls, low, amused, and dripping with promise. Let the game begin. Chapter 3. The moon rose like a blade that night, round, white, and merciless. The kind of moon that legends whispered about. The kind that stirred bloodlines and woke monsters from their slumber. Ava stood by her window, clutching a mug of untouched tea as the city lights shimmered below her. Every instinct told her something was coming. The air felt wrong, too still, too charged. Even the sound of traffic seemed distant, muffled by an invisible tension hanging over the skyline. She hadn't seen Damian since the gala 3 nights ago. No texts, No calls. Just silence, and a hollow ache that grew louder each hour. She'd replayed their last conversation until she could hear his voice in her dreams, see the flicker of silver in his eyes when he said she made everything harder to control. What did he mean by that? And why did his words feel like both a warning and a confession? Her phone buzzed suddenly, the sound sharp in the quiet. A message. Unknown number. Lock your doors. Don't open the windows. No matter what you hear tonight. Her heart stopped. The message wasn't signed, but she knew that voice even through text. Damian. Before she could respond, the lights flickered. A gust of wind rattled the panes, followed by a low, distant howl that crawled beneath her skin. It wasn't human, and it wasn't alone. Ava froze, her mind spinning between disbelief and terror. The city was too modern, too loud for something so primal to exist here, wasn't it? But then another howl answered, closer this time, deeper, angrier. Down on the streets, people began shouting. Sirens wailed, dogs barked, and something massive moved through the fog. Shadows twisted, fast and soundless, darting between alleyways like living smoke. Ava's breath caught as she pressed her face to the window. There, on the rooftop opposite hers, a dark figure crouched, watching. Even from across the gap, she recognized him, Damian. But his eyes weren't silver anymore. They burned gold. He was breathing hard, his muscles tense as if fighting something unseen. His lips moved, murmuring words she couldn't hear, his hands trembling like they were trying to hold back an invisible tide. Then, for the briefest second, their eyes met across the distance, and she understood. He wasn't fighting something outside him. He was fighting himself. The building lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed the city block. Then, from the street below, a scream ripped through the night. Ava stumbled back, her pulse exploding in her ears. She snatched her phone, trying to call the police, but before she could, the line went dead. Another vibration, another message. Stay inside, please. Outside, the world erupted in chaos. A car alarm blared, glass shattered, and something roared, a sound too guttural, too wild to belong to any human. Ava's trembling fingers found the latch on her window and locked it, her breath fogging the glass as she whispered, "Damian, where are you?" She didn't have to wait long for an answer. A figure crashed onto the fire escape with the force of a storm, metal groaning beneath his weight. She gasped, stepping back. Damian stood there, chest heaving, his shirt torn, his skin slick with rain and sweat. His eyes blazed gold, and faint veins of light traced beneath his skin like cracks in marble. "Ava," he said, his voice rough, strained, desperate. "You need to run." She shook her head, fear and worry tangled in her voice. "What's happening?" His hand slammed against the glass. "It's the hunter's moon, the curse. Tonight it's strongest. I can't hold it back much longer." His body trembled, his voice cracking with pain. "Victor planned this. He wants me to lose control. He knows if I do." The sentence hung unfinished, but she understood. If he changed, if the wolf took over, no one near him would survive. Ava's heart twisted. "Then let me help you," she said, voice breaking. "You don't have to face this alone." His laugh came out hoarse, almost bitter. "You don't understand. I can't hurt him, not without risking becoming him. And if I lose control—" He pressed his forehead to the glass, his breath fogging it. "You'll be the first one I destroy." Ava's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. "Then you'd better fight harder," she whispered, "because I'm not leaving you." Something inside him snapped, not the curse, but the part of him that still believed he could survive without her. He shattered the window with a single strike and stepped inside, the cold air rushing around them like a storm. "You shouldn't have said that," he murmured, voice trembling with fury and longing. "Now I can't let you go." The world seemed to slow. His eyes flickered between gold and silver as if the man and the beast were at war. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, growling in agony. "Ava, get away!" he shouted. But she didn't move. Instead, she reached for him, her hand resting against his face. And in that moment, against all reason, the storm went still. The glow beneath his skin dimmed, his breathing steadied. For the first time that night, he looked up at her not as a monster, but as a man barely holding onto his soul. "How?" he whispered. Her voice shook. "Because whatever's inside you, it's not stronger than what's human in you." But their fragile calm shattered when the glass door to her apartment burst open. Victor stepped through, eyes burning red, a cruel smile twisting his face. "Touching," he said softly. "But love can't cure the beast, brother. It only makes the fall more tragic." Damian growled low, rising to his feet. "Stay behind me," he told Ava, his voice no longer human, but entirely his own. The hunter's moon blazed above them like a witness, and Ava knew that whatever happened next, her world would never be the same again. The room trembled as if the storm outside had broken through the walls. Rain lashed against the shattered window, lightning clawed at the sky, and in that wild chaos, the two brothers faced each other, one fighting the curse, the other feeding it. Victor's smirk gleamed like a blade. "Still pretending you can hold it back, Damian? You've been doing this dance for centuries. Let me help you end it." Damian's jaw tightened, his silver eyes flashing with strain. "This isn't your fight, Victor." "Oh, but it is," Victor hissed, stepping closer. "You think you're the savior of our bloodline? You're nothing but a coward clinging to a broken humanity. You should have embraced what we are long ago." His gaze slid to Ava, standing trembling behind Damian. "And now, you bring a human into it? Just like her." Damian's expression darkened instantly. The room seemed to grow colder. "Don't say her name," he warned. Victor chuckled softly, circling them like a predator. "What was it, Damian? A century ago? 2? The last human who thought she could love a wolf? You remember what happened to her, don't you? The blood on your hands when you tore her apart under a full moon?" Ava gasped. Damian's breath faltered. His entire body went rigid, his knuckles white at his sides. "Stop," he said, voice low, trembling with something darker than rage. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but I do," Victor sneered. "You see, dear brother, history loves to repeat itself, and this little waitress," he tilted his head toward Ava, "is just your next tragedy waiting to happen." Before he could finish, Damian moved. It wasn't human speed. It was something else, something blinding. In the blink of an eye, Victor was slammed against the wall, the impact cracking the plaster like thunder. "If you ever touch her," Damian growled, voice layered with a growl not entirely his own, "I'll tear your throat out." Victor laughed even as blood ran from the corner of his mouth. "There he is," he whispered, "the beast beneath the billionaire." Ava's heart raced as she watched the two brothers, both terrifying, both beautiful in their darkness. The air between them shimmered with raw power. It wasn't just a fight. It was centuries of hate, guilt, and destiny colliding under the full moon. Victor's hand shot out, grabbing Damian's wrist, his eyes glowing crimson. "You can't cage what you are, brother," he spat. "You can't keep pretending you're human. The blood moon doesn't lie." The moment he said it, the storm outside roared louder, as if answering a command. The clouds split open, and for the first time that night, the moon itself seemed to pulse with light. Red and alive, bleeding across the city. Ava shielded her eyes, but Damian staggered back, gasping in pain. The veins beneath his skin lit like fire, his body convulsing. "No," he growled, falling to one knee. "Not now." Victor stepped forward, triumphant. "You can't fight the blood moon. It's in our blood, Damian. You were born to destroy." "Maybe," Damian gasped, his voice shaking as his body began to change, bones shifting beneath his skin, claws pushing through trembling fingers. But not tonight. Ava rushed to his side, ignoring Victor's laughter. "Damian, look at me! Stay with me!" she cried, gripping his shoulders. His skin burned under her touch, heat and energy crackling through the air. His eyes flared gold, but her voice cut through the noise, the pain, the beast itself. "You're not him. You're you. I don't care what you are. You saved me. You protect me. That's who you are." For a moment, one fragile heartbeat, the growl in Damian's throat died. His breathing slowed. Then Victor roared, lunging forward. "Enough!" He struck Damian across the chest, sending him crashing into the far wall. Ava screamed, running to him, but Victor's hand closed around her wrist like iron. "Do you know what's really tragic, little human?" Victor whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "You're not even supposed to exist in this story. You were never supposed to meet him." Ava struggled, fury and terror twisting in her chest. "Then why do I feel like I've known him my whole life?" she spat. "Why do I dream of him, of you both, even before I met him?" Victor froze. For the first time, his expression faltered. His grip loosened just enough for Ava to yank free and stumble back. "What did you say?" he demanded. Ava's voice trembled. "I dreamt of a woman with your eyes, and a wolf with his, every night before I met him. She died saving you both." Damian's head lifted slowly, his face pale, eyes blazing. "Ava," he whispered, realization dawning. "You're her." Victor's expression twisted from shock to fury. "No, impossible." "She's the reincarnation," Damian said, voice breaking with awe. "That's why I felt it, the bond. It wasn't new, it was memory." The revelation hung in the air like lightning about to strike. Ava's knees weakened as flashes of forgotten lives flickered through her mind. Blood, moonlight, love, betrayal. She saw the brothers as they once were. Wolves of an ancient pack, cursed by a betrayal that began with her death centuries ago. Victor's snarl tore through the silence. "Then history truly is repeating itself," he hissed. "And this time, I'll make sure it ends the way it should have." He lunged again, but Damian met him mid-air, the two of them crashing through the shattered window, vanishing into the red-lit night below. Ava ran to the edge, staring down at the street where two monstrous shadows circled under the blood moon. Brothers turned beasts, love turned war. The city screamed around them, the curse fully awakened. And as the crimson light bathed her trembling hands, Ava understood one terrifying truth. This wasn't just Damian's curse anymore. It was hers. Chapter 4. The city didn't sleep that night. Sirens wailed through the streets as people ran from shadows they couldn't understand. Massive silhouettes tearing through the storm, snarling beneath the bleeding moon. Ava watched from her window, her heart a wild drumbeat against her ribs. She saw the flashes of silver and gold beneath the rain, the blur of movement that could only be Damian and Victor locked in a war that wasn't meant for human eyes. The moment they crashed out of sight, she grabbed her coat and bolted for the door. Logic screamed for her to stay, but something stronger pulled her forward, something ancient, instinctive. It wasn't courage, it was memory. Her footsteps echoed down the stairwell, her breath sharp in the freezing air. The city streets were chaos, cars overturned, windows shattered, the smell of metal and rain mixing into something raw. But underneath it all, Ava heard it. A heartbeat. Deep, rhythmic, impossible. It wasn't her own. It was his. She followed the sound through the fog until she reached the edge of Blackwood Park, the oldest part of the city, where the streetlights never seemed to reach. The air was colder here, heavier, thick with something that felt alive. Then, out of the mist, she saw him. Damian. He was on his knees, breathing hard, blood running down his jaw. The glow had faded from his eyes, but the wolf still lingered beneath the surface, restless and burning. Across from him stood Victor, perfectly still, watching. His shirt was torn, his smile painted with blood. You always were the weaker one, Victor sneered, trying to fight what you are. Damian wiped the blood from his mouth, his voice low and ragged. You mistake mercy for weakness. Victor laughed. Mercy. That's what got you cursed in the first place. The words hung like thunder. Ava froze, hidden behind a tree. Her pulse quickened. The first time she'd heard the word curse, it had sounded like myth. But now, it felt real. What curse? She whispered under her breath. Victor tilted his head, eyes gleaming red in the dark. Should I remind you, brother, how our ancestor defied the pact, how he chose love over blood, and the moon took everything from him? You think you're different? You're just reliving his mistake, falling for a woman who carries death in her veins. Damian's face twisted in pain, but not from Victor's words, from the truth buried within them. The curse began with her, he said softly, his voice breaking, and it will end with her. Ava stepped out from the shadows before she could stop herself. Then tell me what that means. Both men turned, two predators, two brothers, eyes flashing in opposite light. Damian's expression darkened instantly. Ava, no. But Victor smiled, the kind of smile that meant danger. Ah, the girl of the hour, he said. Do you even know what you are, little reincarnate? Do you know why your blood sings to us? Her throat went dry. What are you talking about? Victor took a slow step toward her. You are the echo of the first betrayal, the mortal who broke the moon's covenant, the one whose love damned 1,000 generations. Damian moved between them in a heartbeat, his growl low and primal. Don't listen to him. But Victor's words struck something deep within her, something that had been stirring since the first night she saw Damian's eyes glow in the rain. Images flooded her mind, flashes of forests bathed in silver light, of a woman standing before a great wolf beneath a crimson moon. Her voice echoed in the memory. I choose love, even if it kills me. Ava gasped, clutching her head. I saw it. I saw her. Damian turned, his voice urgent. Ava, stop. Your memories, they'll consume you if you push too far. But she didn't stop. The visions came faster, blood spilled on stone, a sacred oath broken, a wolf howling in anguish as lightning split the sky. She made a promise, Ava whispered through tears. She swore to free him from the curse of the first blood. Victor's laughter broke through her trance, and she failed, just like you will. Damian's growl tore through the silence. Enough. He lunged, but Victor vanished in a blur, his voice fading into the storm. You can't protect her from destiny, brother. The moon always claims its debt. The rain softened, but the silence it left behind was worse. Damian stood motionless, his chest heaving. He's right, he said finally, his voice low. This curse, it started with the blood of the first love, and only that same blood can end it. Ava stepped closer, trembling. You mean me? He looked at her with a sorrow that felt like the weight of centuries. Your soul carries her memory, her sacrifice. You were reborn to finish what she couldn't. She shook her head, tears streaking her cheeks. I'm just a person. I don't have magic or power or... Damian took her hand, his touch warm despite the rain. You have something stronger, he said softly. Choice. Ava met his gaze, and for a moment everything went still. The storm, the fear, even the curse that pulsed between them. Then tell me what I have to do, she whispered. He hesitated, then spoke the words that would change everything. To break the curse, the blood that started it must be shed again, willingly under the next full moon. The weight of it hit her like cold water. You mean, I have to die? Damian closed his eyes. If you don't, the curse will never end. And if I lose control again, this world won't survive another moon like tonight's. The silence that followed was deafening. The rain had stopped. The moon still glowed red above them, heavy with fate. And for the first time, Ava understood what it truly meant to love a cursed man. It wasn't about saving him. It was about choosing him, even if it meant losing herself. The storm had passed, but the city still trembled. The moon lingered in the sky, no longer crimson, but bruised, as though mourning what was yet to come. Ava and Damian stood in the ruins of Blackwood Park, the wind whispering through the skeletal trees. He had told her the truth, yet it still felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. That her blood carried the key to an ancient curse, that her life itself had become the tether between man and monster. They found shelter in an abandoned chapel at the edge of the woods. The candles Damian lit flickered against the cracked walls, throwing shadows that looked too alive. He stood silently by the altar, tracing a claw mark on the stone, one that pulsed faintly, as if remembering the touch of something divine. "This place once belonged to the first circle," he said quietly. "The wolves who swore their allegiance to the moon before the curse fractured our kind." Ava sat on the cold bench, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "And what are you planning to do here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Swear a blood oath," he said, "to bind your life to mine until the curse is broken." She looked up sharply. "Bind my life? Damian, you said I had to die for the curse to end." "I said your blood must be given willingly," he corrected, meeting her gaze. "But there may be another way, one the old texts never wanted anyone to know. If we share the oath, your soul becomes part of mine. If I die, the curse ends. If I live, you will too. But the bond will be eternal." Ava's heart twisted. "So if you fall, I fall too?" He nodded once. "And if either of us breaks the vow, the curse consumes us both." Silence stretched between them, filled with the echo of ancient vows and unseen spirits. Ava rose and walked slowly to the altar, her reflection trembling in the melted wax of the candles. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she asked. "Because it's forbidden," Damian admitted. "The blood oath was the last act of defiance by the first Luna, your ancestor. She tried to save the Alpha she loved by sharing her life with his. It worked for one night, until she broke her promise." "What promise?" He turned toward her, his eyes glowing faintly gold again. "She promised not to love him as a man, only as a protector, a guardian. But she did, and the moon, jealous and unyielding, punished them both." Ava exhaled shakily, the air catching in her throat. "So this isn't just about us. It's repeating what they started." "Yes," Damian said, "but this time we have a chance to finish it." He took a blade from the altar, an old curved dagger etched with symbols that shimmered faintly in the candlelight. "The ritual requires blood, from both of us. It must be done under the light of the waning moon." He pressed the dagger to his palm and drew a sharp line across it. His blood glowed like liquid fire, dripping onto the stone. "Say my name," he whispered. "Damian Vale," she breathed, trembling. "Now offer yours." Her fingers shook as she took the blade. The metal was warm, almost alive. She pressed it lightly against her skin, wincing as it split her palm. The blood welled up, glowing faintly, as though recognizing its purpose. Ava Sinclair. Their hands met above the altar, blood mingling, red and gold, before sinking into the stone. The air shimmered. The ground trembled. Light flared between their joined palms, spiraling upward like smoke made of starlight. Ava gasped as something ancient rushed through her. Voices, memories, visions. She saw forests burning under a silver moon, heard wolves crying her name across centuries. She saw the first Luna standing before her Alpha, swearing her vow. "By love's fire and blood's call, I bind my soul to thine." Ava's lips moved before she realized she was speaking. "By blood and moonlight, I bind my life to yours. If death comes for you, it comes for me too." Damian's voice joined hers, low and steady. By the wolf within and the man I was, I vow to guard your breath with my own, until the moon herself is silenced. The final word left their lips, and a surge of power rippled through the chapel. The candles burst with silver flame, the shadows vanished, and for a heartbeat, everything went still. Even time. Ava felt her heartbeat sync with Damian's, their breaths falling into the same rhythm. When the light faded, the mark of the oath glowed faintly on their palms, a crescent moon surrounded by thorns. She touched it in awe. "It's done?" Damian nodded. "The bond is sealed." But even as he said it, the wind outside howled, and the stained glass shattered inward. A whisper filled the air, a voice cold and ancient. "The moon does not forgive. The bond will break in blood." Ava staggered backward, covering her ears. "What was that?" "The curse," Damian said grimly. "It knows." Before either could speak again, the sound of footsteps echoed from the forest beyond the chapel. Shadows moved, not human, not wolf, but something in between. The moon enforcers. Damian's jaw tightened. "They've come to stop us." Ava looked toward the broken window, the faint light of torches glinting in the distance. "What do we do?" He turned to her, his eyes burning gold once more. "We run, but remember this, Ava." He took her face in his blood-stained hands. "No matter what happens next, our souls are one now. If I fall, don't look back." She stared into his eyes, her heart pounding. "I won't leave you." The door burst open. A dozen shadowed figures poured in, their voices like wind and fire. The blood oath still burned between their palms as Damian shifted, his body half human, half beast, and Ava, now bound by the same magic, felt the same heat rise inside her. For the first time, she understood what it meant to be the other half of the curse. She was no longer the hunted. She was part of the storm. Chapter 5. The forest was alive with pursuit. The night air crackled with tension as Ava ran beside Damian, their footsteps pounding against the soaked earth. The rain had stopped, but the scent of blood and ash still clung to the wind. Behind them came the sound of the moon enforcers, half wolves, half shadows, creatures bound to the ancient law that forbade what they had just done. Each movement in the dark carried the weight of death. "Keep running!" Damian shouted, his voice rough and deepened by the wolf still stirring beneath his skin. His golden eyes cut through the mist like fire. "Don't look back, Ava." But she did, just for a heartbeat. And what she saw burned into her mind. Figures cloaked in black, their eyes glowing white, moving with unnatural speed. Their weapons shimmered like silver lightning, designed to cut through immortal flesh. Her breath caught in her throat. "They're gaining on us." Damian turned, slashing his claws through the nearest trunk. The tree cracked and fell, blocking part of the trail. "Not for long," he growled. But he was slowing. Ava could feel it. Through the bond that connected their blood, every pulse of his exhaustion echoed in her veins. His wounds hadn't healed from the last fight with Victor. The oath had bound them tighter than he'd expected. Every ounce of pain he carried, she now shared. They burst through the last line of trees, stumbling onto the open cliffs overlooking the valley below. The moon hung low, pale and ghostly, washing the world in its silver light. The ground here was slick and uneven, and far below, the river thundered against the rocks. Ava bent over, gasping for breath. "We can't keep running forever," she said. Damian's jaw clenched. "We don't need forever, just until dawn." "Dawn?" He nodded, scanning the horizon. "Once the moon sets, the enforcers lose their strength. But until then, they're bound to her light." Before Ava could answer, the sound of breaking branches erupted behind them. The enforcers were close, too close. Damian stepped forward, his body shifting again, the wolf rising through his form until his eyes were pure gold. "Stay behind me," he said. But Ava's blood was burning, literally. The bond between them had begun to flare, threads of red light spiraling beneath her skin like molten veins. She staggered, clutching her chest. "Damian, something's happening." He turned, eyes widening. "The oath, it's awakening too fast." Pain lanced through her body as she collapsed to her knees. The world tilted, the air pulsing with invisible energy. She could hear whispers in the wind, voices not her own. The blood remembers. The Luna returns. When she opened her eyes, the forest glowed. She could see everything. The heartbeat of the trees, the pulse of the earth, even the movement of the enforcers miles away. Her senses were sharper, more alive. And when she looked at Damian, she saw more than the man or the beast. She saw the fire that tied his soul to hers. "Ava," he said, breathless, watching her aura flare. "You're changing." Before either could comprehend it, the first enforcer leapt from the shadows. Damian lunged to intercept, but Ava raised her hand instinctively, and a burst of light exploded from her palm. The creature was thrown backward, crashing into a tree and vanishing in smoke. She stared at her hand, trembling. What was that? Damian's expression hardened. "The Luna's power," he said. "You've inherited it." The other enforcers hesitated, circling like wolves uncertain of their prey. They could smell it now, the divine scent of reborn blood, the forbidden power of the first Luna awakened after centuries. "She's the vessel," one of them hissed. "Take her before the curse completes," Damian snarled, stepping in front of her. "You'll have to go through me first." They came all at once, shadows blurring, claws flashing, voices chanting in a language older than the moon itself. Damian met them head-on, his claws tearing through darkness, his body moving like a force of nature. Ava stood behind him, heart pounding, until one of the enforcers slipped past him and lunged straight at her. Without thinking, she threw up her arm again. This time, the light didn't burst. It flowed. Threads of silver energy coiled around her fingers, forming a glowing shield that caught the creature mid-air and flung it over the cliff. Her pulse roared in her ears. The bond burned hotter, her power responding not to thought, but emotion. Fear, love, instinct. Damian turned, blood splattered across his face. "Ava, I can handle it," she shouted back, though her hands shook violently. "Just don't get yourself killed." He almost smiled. "Yes, Luna." Together they fought, not as man and woman, but as one force, their movements synchronized by something beyond mortal understanding. Each strike Damian made was echoed in Ava's heart. Each surge of light she unleashed strengthened his limbs. The bond had become a rhythm of survival. But then the ground beneath them cracked. One of the enforcers had driven his weapon deep into the earth, channeling the moon's wrath itself. The air turned white-hot, and a fissure tore through the cliffside. Damian shoved Ava back as the ground gave way beneath him. "Damian!" she screamed, reaching for him, but the light between them flared violently, pulling her to her knees. The blood mark on her palm burned. Their connection stretched thin like a cord ready to snap. Damian hung from the edge, his claws scraping rock. "Don't come closer," he shouted. "The bond. If you fall, we both." But she didn't listen. The fear in her heart was nothing compared to the pull of the blood oath. She crawled to the edge, the light blazing through her veins. "I told you I wouldn't leave you." With one desperate reach, she grabbed his wrist. The moment their skin touched, a surge of power erupted between them, white and red, fire and moonlight merging as one. The enforcers stumbled back, blinded. The very ground trembled as the mark on their hands ignited, sending a shockwave across the valley. And then, everything went silent. The enforcers were gone. The cliffs were shattered. And Ava lay on the ground, her vision flickering, Damian's hand still gripping hers. He leaned over her, his face pale, his voice trembling. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. She smiled weakly, eyes closing. "I told you, we're in this together." The bond between them pulsed once, steady and alive, as the last of the moonlight faded over the horizon. But far above the clouds, the moon watched, silent and unyielding, its pale light hiding a single crimson gleam. The curse had shifted. It wasn't broken. Not yet. When Ava opened her eyes, the world was blurred in silver and shadow. The first sound she heard was the distant cry of wolves, deep, sorrowful, echoing through the mountain air. She tried to move, but her body felt heavy, her veins thrumming with a heat that didn't belong to her. A faint glow still pulsed beneath her skin, the remnant of the bond that had saved them. "Easy," a voice murmured near her ear. "You're safe. For now." She turned her head. Damian sat beside her, his clothes torn, his face marked by exhaustion and something she hadn't seen before. Fear. They were inside a stone cavern, lit by torches that burned with a pale blue flame. The air smelled of wet earth and herbs. Strange markings covered the walls, symbols that pulsed faintly like living veins. "Where are we?" she whispered. "The sanctuary of the fallen," he replied quietly. "A refuge for wolves who broke the moon's law. Exiles, outcasts, my kind of people." She pushed herself up, her vision slowly adjusting. Dozens of figures moved in the shadows, wolves in human form, their eyes reflecting faint light, their presence both wild and broken. Some bowed when they saw Damian, others looked away. "They know who you are," she said softly. "They know what I am," he corrected. "A cursed alpha who dared to defy the moon. And now, the fool who bound his soul to hers." His gaze fell on her hand. The mark of the blood oath was still there, brighter than before, veins of gold threading outward from the crescent. Ava reached for it instinctively, but Damian caught her wrist. "Don't touch it," he said sharply. "The bond is unstable." "Unstable?" He hesitated, then looked away. "You absorbed too much power when you saved me. The oath was never meant to be invoked like that. It's changing you." Ava frowned, glancing at her reflection in the pool of water beside them. Her eyes glowed faintly silver, her skin shimmering under the torchlight. "Changing me into what?" "The Luna reborn," he said grimly. "The same power that created the curse now lives in you. If you lose control, you could destroy everything, including me." She looked up at him, heart hammering. "Then we find a way to stop it. Together." He almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You still don't understand, Ava. The bond isn't just life and death. It's emotion. Every heartbeat we share feeds the curse. The stronger our connection, the closer the end comes." Before she could respond, a low growl rippled through the cavern. The other wolves were watching, their expressions tense, fearful. A tall woman stepped forward, her hair silver as the moonlight. "So it's true," she said. "The Alpha broke the law again." Damian stiffened. "Leora." "Alpha Damian," she said coolly. "Or should I say, Fallen One." She walked in a slow circle around him, her gaze flicking to Ava. "And this must be the human who carries the curse. The reincarnation of the first Luna." Ava met her gaze, trying to sound steadier than she felt. "I'm not your enemy." Leora smiled faintly. "Then why does the air burn where you stand?" She pointed toward the markings on the wall. They were glowing brighter now, pulsing with Ava's heartbeat. "Your bond is waking something that's been buried for centuries." Damian stepped between them. "She's under my protection." Leora's eyes flashed. "You think that matters? You brought death to this sanctuary the moment you crossed the oath. The moon will come for her. For all of us." The murmurs around them grew louder, wolves shifting nervously in the dark. The tension was suffocating. Ava could feel their fear, their anger, but also something deeper, something ancient. The curse wasn't just hers to bear, it had marked them all. "What is this place really?" she asked quietly. "Why do you hide here?" Leora turned to her, eyes softer now. "Because once, long ago, the moon chose 12 to carry her power. But when one of them fell in love with a mortal, she cursed us all. Those who survived fled here, to live between light and shadow, never human, never beast, waiting for the day the curse would end. Ava felt her throat tighten. And now you think that day has come? Leora studied her closely. Either that or the end of everything. Before Ava could answer, a sound split the silence, a long, mournful howl that shook the very stones. The torches flickered. The wolves froze. Damian's head snapped up, his eyes widening. That's not one of ours. Leora's expression darkened. Then who? Another howl joined it, this one lower, more primal. The sound rolled through the mountains like thunder. Damian's claws extended instinctively. They found us. Ava stood, her heart racing. The enforcers? No, Damian said, his voice low and grim. Something worse. The fallen who gave up their souls. He turned to her, his expression hardening. Stay behind me, no matter what happens. But before he could take another step, the entrance to the cavern exploded inward. Dust and rock filled the air as figures emerged from the smoke, wolves with burning eyes and ash-black fur, their howls like fire and metal. The sanctuary erupted into chaos. Wolves clashed with wolves, the air filled with claws, fire, and blood. Ava stumbled backward as one of the fallen lunged toward her, its body twisting unnaturally, face half human, half beast. Instinct took over. The light in her veins surged again, flaring outward in a blast that threw the creature across the cavern. Damian turned in time to see it. His eyes widened, not in awe, but fear. Ava, you have to stop. I can't, she screamed, her body trembling as the light grew brighter, wild and uncontrolled. The ground beneath them cracked, the air humming with power. The fallen roared, retreating from the blinding glow. The wolves of the sanctuary fell to their knees, shielding their eyes. Only Damian stood, forcing his way toward her through the storm of light. Ava, listen to me, he shouted. The bond is feeding on your fear. You have to let it go. She looked at him through the blinding haze. If I let go, I'll lose you. His voice broke through the roar like a blade through silence. If you don't, we'll both be lost. And then, as if the moon herself heard his plea, the light shattered. The glow vanished. The cavern fell into darkness. Ava collapsed into Damian's arms, her breath shallow, her mark still burning faintly between them. Around them lay silence, broken bodies, frightened wolves, and the lingering echo of the howl that had started it all. Damian held her close, his voice trembling with something between grief and resolve. The curse isn't waiting anymore, he whispered. It's hunting us. And somewhere far above, beneath the bruised light of the moon, another figure watched. Victor, his eyes glowing like molten gold, his smile cold as death. Let the curse run its course, he murmured. Soon, the Alpha will fall. Chapter 6. Dawn came slowly, bleeding gray light through the torn ceiling of the cavern. Smoke still hung heavy in the air. The sanctuary lay in ruins, walls cracked, the scent of blood thick on the ground. The survivors moved like ghosts, tending to the wounded, whispering prayers to a moon that had long since stopped listening. Ava sat near the dying fire, her hands trembling. Her palms still glowed faintly, the mark of the oath pulsing like a heartbeat beneath her skin. Every time it flared, she could feel the echo of what she'd done. The blinding surge of light, the screams, the silence that followed. She had saved them, and destroyed part of their refuge in the process. Across from her, Damian crouched beside a fallen wolf. His hands were steady, but his eyes were hollow. He hadn't spoken much since the fight. Every movement seemed weighed down by the burden of something heavier than guilt. Prophecy. When he finally stood, his voice was rough. 5 dead, 9 wounded, 2 missing. Ava looked up, her throat tight. The ones who attacked us, the fallen, they were like nothing I've ever seen. What were they? Damian wiped the blood from his hands, the silver light flickering faintly in his eyes. They were once like me, wolves who swore their lives to the moon. But when they broke their oaths, the moon stripped their souls and turned them into her weapons. They exist to destroy what she deems unnatural, and now that's us. Because of the blood oath, Ava whispered. Because of you, he corrected softly, though there was no malice in his tone. You've become the moon's opposite, her reflection turned away from her light, and the balance can't exist while you're alive. Ava stared at the mark on her hand, the faint crescent gleaming through the soot. So what are you saying? That I'm some kind of abomination? Damian moved closer, his shadow falling over her. You're not an abomination. You're the consequence. Before she could answer, Leora appeared at the entrance, her expression tight. Alpha. Damian turned. Report. They found something buried under the altar, something the attack uncovered. She handed him a small, dust-covered box carved from obsidian. Symbols shimmered faintly across its surface, the same markings that lined the sanctuary walls. It's sealed by the old tongue. We think it was hidden when the first Luna fled. Ava's breath caught. The first Luna? My ancestor? Leora nodded. If she left it here, it was meant to stay buried. But the quake from your power unearthed it. Her tone was sharp, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of awe. Perhaps it's time it was opened. Damian ran his hand across the box. The symbols pulsed under his touch, responding to the blood mark on his palm. A low hum filled the air, and the lock clicked open. The lid lifted with a hiss, releasing a faint, silvery mist that swirled like smoke. Inside lay a piece of parchment, ancient, cracked, but still intact, and a small vial filled with dark liquid that shimmered like starlight. Ava leaned closer. What is it? Damian's eyes narrowed as he read the faded script. The reckoning of blood. When the moon denies her children, one may rewrite the curse by shedding the blood that binds love and sin. Leora frowned. Rewrite the curse? That's not possible. But Ava felt a strange tug in her chest, as though the words were meant for her. What if it means the curse can be changed instead of broken? Damian's jaw tightened. To rewrite it, you'd have to command the moon itself, and the only way to do that, he glanced at the vial, is through the reckoning ritual, the blood of the one who carries both light and darkness. She froze. My blood. Leora stepped back, her voice wary. Alpha, you can't be considering this. The reckoning ritual was forbidden even before the curse. It calls the moon's spirit directly. Those who attempt it die before the sun rises. But Damian's expression had hardened into something resolute and dangerous. If it means freeing her, freeing all of us, then it's worth the risk. Ava shook her head, panic rising in her chest. No. You don't even know what that ritual will do. It could kill you or worse, trap your soul forever. I've lived with this curse for centuries, he said quietly. Every full moon, I become something less than human. Every time I look at you, I see the same fate waiting to claim you. If the reckoning can end that, I'll face it. She stepped forward, grabbing his arm. Don't talk like that. You think I want you to die for me? His voice softened. No, but I'd rather die as a man who chose love than live as a monster who lost it. Before she could speak, the ground beneath them shuddered, a deep, pulsing tremor that made the torches flicker. The parchment in Damian's hand glowed faintly, and from outside came the sound of a single, distant howl, long, mournful, familiar. Ava's blood ran cold. Victor! Damian's head snapped up, his golden eyes igniting. He's close. Leora drew her weapon. He leads the remaining fallen. They're gathering in the valley. Whatever he's planning, it's bigger than before. Ava turned to Damian, her voice breaking. Then the reckoning isn't just about us. He's trying to use it, isn't he? To twist the curse in his favor. Damian's jaw tightened. Yes. If he performs it first, he'll become the moon's chosen, the dark alpha, and he'll enslave every living wolf under his command. The realization hit her like ice. Then we can't let him finish it. Damian nodded once, his gaze fierce and unyielding. Then we prepare for the reckoning. Tonight. Leora stepped forward, horrified. Alpha, that's suicide. Damian looked toward the mouth of the cavern, where the dying moon still hung low in the sky. Maybe, he said quietly. But it's the only way to end this, one way or another. He turned back to Ava, his voice low but steady. When the moon rises tonight, we meet Victor at the Valley of Shadows. There will be no more running, no more hiding, only truth. Ava swallowed hard, her fingers brushing the mark on her palm, the bond that now glowed brighter than ever. Then we end it together. Damian's eyes softened for the briefest moment. Together. And as the morning sun crept over the jagged mountains, the wolves of the fallen sanctuary bowed their heads, for they knew that when the next moon rose, the world would tremble beneath its reckoning. Night fell with a dreadful beauty, the kind that made even the stars hold their breath. The moon rose full and flawless, suspended like a blade above the valley. Its light was neither silver nor gold, but a haunting crimson hue, as though it had dipped itself in blood. The air carried the scent of iron and frost. Every leaf, every whisper seemed to echo the same truth. The reckoning had begun. Ava stood at the edge of the cliffs, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Below, the Valley of Shadows spread out like an open wound, blackened soil, ancient stones carved with runes, and a circular altar glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. It was there that it had all begun, centuries ago, where the first Luna had fallen, where love had defied the moon, and where the curse had taken its first breath. Damian came to stand beside her, dressed in black, his eyes burning like molten gold. The air around him pulsed faintly, the wolf within restless, waiting for release. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything, fear, love, and inevitability woven into one. Finally, he whispered, "Once we step into that valley, there's no turning back." Ava looked up at him, the wind tugging at her hair. There never was. Down below, the shadows moved. Dozens of figures emerged from the mist, wolves cloaked in darkness, their bodies shifting between human and beast. And at the center of them, standing tall and cruelly beautiful beneath the bleeding moon, was Victor. He was dressed in a long coat of black leather, the symbol of the old blood burned into his chest. His eyes gleamed like fire-lit gold as he raised his head. "So the prodigal Alpha returns," he called, his voice echoing through the valley. "And he brings his little curse with him." Damian stepped forward, his voice cold. "This ends tonight, brother." Victor laughed, a deep, resonant sound that sent shivers through the air. "You always did love dramatics, but tell me, Damian, what makes you think you're the one ending it? You, who defied the moon? You, who chained your soul to a mortal's?" Ava descended the slope with Damian beside her, her footsteps sure despite the tremors in her chest. "You talk about defiance," she said, her voice steady. "But what you're doing is worse. You're turning a curse into a weapon." Victor's smile widened. "Weapon? No, darling, I'm perfecting it. The moon chose me long before she chose you. You carry her pity, I carry her will." He gestured toward the altar. "The reckoning demands balance. One who bears the curse must die, or ascend. I've chosen ascension." "And the cost?" Damian asked. Victor's eyes flashed. "The weak, the cursed, the ones who should never have existed." His gaze flicked to Ava. "Starting with her." The words struck like a blow, but Ava didn't flinch. "Then you'll have to go through me first." Victor tilted his head, amused. "Oh, I plan to." The ground trembled as his followers began to shift, bones snapping, fur erupting, claws glinting beneath the red light. Damian's body answered instinctively, his form half-shifting, his breath fogging in the cold. "Stay behind me," he said through gritted teeth, but Ava shook her head. "Not this time." The mark on her palm began to burn, light spilling from her skin in threads of gold and white. Damian's mark responded, glowing in harmony. Together, their power resonated, two halves of the same defiance, and the valley roared to life. Victor sneered, baring his fangs. "Then let the moon decide who she loves more." The battle erupted. Wolves collided in a storm of claws and fire. The ground split beneath their weight, sending sparks of red light into the air. Damian tore through the first wave with brutal precision, his movements fluid and relentless. Ava stood at the altar, her eyes glowing bright as moonfire, her hands weaving arcs of energy that sliced through the darkness. Every heartbeat between them was synchronized, her magic feeding his strength, his will anchoring her power. But Victor was faster, stronger. The moon's power flowed through him like blood. He leapt across the battlefield, his claws colliding with Damian's in a blinding flash. The brothers locked, strength against strength, hatred against blood. "You think she'll save you?" Victor snarled. "She's your undoing, Damian. She's the reason we're cursed," Damian roared, forcing him back. "No, she's the reason we're still human." The words struck something deep within Ava. Her chest burned, the bond flaring. She saw flashes, visions not her own. The first Luna kneeling before her alpha, her hand covered in blood. The moon above, weeping light. And a voice, soft and ancient, whispering through her mind, "End it, child. End what began with love." Ava's gaze lifted to the altar. The reckoning. The vial from the sanctuary glimmered faintly in her cloak, the blood of the first Luna. She suddenly understood. The ritual wasn't about sacrifice. It was about choice. She climbed the steps of the altar, ignoring Damian's shout as he fought to reach her. Victor saw her move and laughed, throwing Damian aside. "Ah, so the little Luna remembers. Go on then. Spill your blood and see if the moon cares." Ava raised the vial, her hand trembling. The moon's light focused on her, red turning to white, pure and blinding. "This curse began with love," she said, her voice echoing across the valley. "Then let love be what ends it." She uncorked the vial and poured it over the mark on her palm. The liquid sizzled, burning like fire, and then her blood began to glow, merging with it. The air exploded with energy. Damian's roar cut through the chaos. "Ava, no!" Victor lunged toward her, but the light consumed everything. The wolves fell silent. The sky split open. Ava's body lifted from the ground, her hair fanned out like silver flame. Her eyes were no longer human. She looked up at the moon, and for the first time, the moon looked back. "I am not your curse," Ava whispered, her voice layered with power. "I am your reckoning." The valley erupted in light. The shadows screamed as they were torn apart. The wolves dropped to their knees, howling in agony and awe. Victor staggered backward, his power unraveling. "No, this isn't how it's supposed to end." Ava turned toward him, her eyes shining with tears and fury. "It's exactly how it should." She raised her hand, and the curse shattered. The blood mark on her palm blazed once, then vanished. The red moon flickered and turned silver again. The wind stilled. The howls faded into silence. When the light dimmed, Ava collapsed. Damian caught her before she hit the ground, his hands shaking as he cradled her. Her skin was pale, her heartbeat faint but steady. "Ava," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "Stay with me, please." Her lips moved weakly. "Did it work?" He looked up at the sky. The moon hung serene and white, no longer bleeding. The curse was gone. The wolves were free. "Yes," he whispered. "It worked." Her eyes fluttered closed, a faint smile touching her lips. Then it was worth it. As her breathing slowed, Damian held her tighter, his tears falling silently onto her face. Around them, the wolves rose one by one, their howls echoing across the valley, not in mourning, but in reverence. And somewhere in the fading mist, Victor's body turned to ash, his last words carried on the wind. Love is the only curse that never dies. Damian looked toward the silver moon, his voice breaking in the silence. Then let it live through me. He pressed his lips to Ava's forehead, a kiss of promise, of farewell, and of eternity. For the first time in centuries, the moon did not punish love. It blessed it. Epilogue. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the valley, washing away the crimson of the night before. The once haunted ground, where shadows had whispered for centuries, now shimmered with dew and silver mist. Where there had been fire and fury, there was now silence, soft, sacred, and heavy with the scent of renewal. The valley that had been a grave for love was now its monument. Damian sat at the edge of the altar, Ava's body resting gently in his arms. Her skin was no longer cold, it glowed faintly beneath the sunlight, like the moon's last kiss before fading from the sky. The mark that once cursed her hand was gone, replaced by a faint scar shaped like a crescent. His fingers traced it with trembling reverence, the memory of her voice still echoing in his mind. Then, let love be what ends it. For the first time in his immortal life, Damian felt time move again. He could feel the sun's warmth not as an enemy, but as a reminder that he was still here, that love had not perished with her. Around him, the surviving wolves stirred, their bodies no longer bound by pain or rage. They looked to him, their alpha, not out of fear, but out of faith. And Damian understood. The curse was broken, but the bond of blood still ran deep. He laid Ava's body gently on the altar of stone, now cracked and glowing faintly gold. As the sun climbed higher, beams of light fell upon her face, and for a heartbeat he thought he saw her lips move in a faint smile. A soft wind brushed his cheek, carrying her scent, wildflowers and rain. "You kept your promise," he whispered, voice breaking. "You brought us home." The forest beyond the valley began to stir with life again. Birds that had not sung for years began to call. The trees swayed with a rhythm older than memory. Even the air seemed to hum with the pulse of something reborn. The wolves shifted back into human form one by one, their faces streaked with tears and wonder. Among them was Lyra, the healer, who approached Damian and bowed her head. "She is not gone," she said softly. "The moon chose her spirit. She'll live wherever its light touches." Damian looked toward the fading moon, still faintly visible in the morning sky. "Then I'll follow its light," he said quietly, "for as long as it shines." Weeks passed, and the world beyond the valley began to notice the change. The forests grew denser, richer. The storms that once plagued the mountains ceased. The wolves, freed from their blood oath, scattered to rebuild, not as beasts of the night, but as guardians of balance. Legends spread in whispers and songs of a Luna who defied the curse and an Alpha who chose love over power. They called it the dawn of the new moon. Damian rebuilt the Blackwood estate, not as a fortress of isolation, but as a sanctuary. The once dark halls filled with laughter, music, and the scent of burning wood. He spent his nights walking beneath the stars, speaking to the wind as though it carried her answers. Sometimes, when the moon was full and the valley shone white, he could feel her presence, soft fingers on his cheek, a whisper behind his heart. "I told you love never dies," she would murmur, and he would smile, eyes closed, feeling her warmth like sunlight breaking through mist. Years passed. Mortals grew old. Kingdoms rose and fell, and stories turned into myths. But in the heart of the enchanted forest, there was a single place where time did not touch, a valley of silver grass and white stones. And there, Under every full moon, a great black wolf would appear, standing at the altar where the first Luna had once fallen. He would tilt his head to the heavens and howl, not in sorrow, but in devotion. And sometimes, when the light hit just right, two figures could be seen dancing in the mist, a man and a woman, their hands intertwined, their laughter echoing like wind chimes in eternity. They said love could not outlive the curse. But in the valley of shadows, love became the curse that healed the world. The moon no longer mourned. It smiled. And from that dawn onward, every full moon carried their story of the Alpha who found his heart and the Luna who gave hers to set him free. The legend of Damian and Ava, bound to the Cold Billionaire Wolf, lived forever in the light of the moon.